Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
So, Sharan, I have been accused of clickbaiting with my podcast topics quite a few times by you. Now, I think the shoe is on the other foot. Yeah. What are you doing with this headline now? Aren't you clickbaiting? Or are you telling the listeners to either fight the urge to flight?
See, I'm always threatened in August company. And when I'm with people like you at your level, I I have to feel threatened, right? There's a book which says only the paranoid survive. Have you read it?
No, I've not read it. I've heard a lot about it. Yes.
It's about, see, the body's got this fight or flight automatic response, right? When you're in a perceived threat or in danger.
Mm-hmm.
But brands don't have it because brands are managed by people and we always want to persevere. And this thought was triggered because I met a legacy business owner
Okay.
who was vehemently insisting that he is going to be able to resurrect the category after everybody's left the category. At the moment, most brands have exited the category. And I also see entrepreneurs who take up businesses which are against the grain, and it's an uphill task, and they take great pride in persevering, right? We value perseverance in entrepreneurs. But sometimes they are going up a hill which is not going to end at all. They like to say in English, right? Sometimes the light at the end of the tunnel is that of an incoming train, and they don't realize it. So the wisdom is basically in understanding why you're in a bad phase or struggling for growth, and that will help you understand whether your category is going through a slump or if it is going through a terminal decline.
Okay. So, you, 2-3 operative words that I caught. One was why. So, understanding the why. The second was around either it's a slump or it's a terminal decline, right? So, just help us differentiate between slump and terminal decline.
A slump is if you're running a brand in a struggling category. What happens is there is a temporary decline in the business. For example, there could be some controversy where people are reducing consumption of your category. Now, in other places where people are moving away from not just your brand, but from your category to another category. So that is the primary indicator of what's happening, or if your brand is in a slump or if it's going to be in terminal decline.
So, for example, during COVID, a lot of categories slumped because of extrinsic reasons, nothing to do with, or too often when we read in economic times that the rural demand hasn't picked up, or the growth isn't as high, inflation is rising, so discretionary spends go low. So there is a slump in luxury categories, for example. So that's what you're calling a slump.
Yeah, those are temporary decline which will correct in their automatic cycle.
Okay. And terminal decline is when people move out of your category. For example, if you were a video cassette or a audio cassette owner,
Absolutely.
you are in terminal decline in the last decade or so, a couple of decades. Okay.
My two favorite examples for this is Maggi and Tang, the brand that I manage.
Maggi and Tang. Okay. Yeah, go on.
Maggi went through this controversy in 2015-16, right? So this is when people stepped back from Maggi, and a lot of other players, a lot of local players entered the instant noodles category. So Maggi went through a slump. The category did not. And even when the category was kind of slowed down a little, it is more because people were stepping back. Maybe it's about health reasons, but when Maggi came back, it came back with a vengeance. So it is only a temporary slump. Now take the case of Tang. While through the entire period from 2012 to 2016, we were on a growth trajectory. But the entire concentrates category was in decline. And people were moving from concentrates to ready-to-drink beverages.
Okay. So
when such a shift happens, like you said, from a video cassette to streaming, you really can't fight the fight. And there are many signals for this. So that's not the only one, but this is a way to differentiate between a slump and a terminal decline.
Interesting. Okay. So you've successfully shifted the blame on concentrates category to the category slump.
We
Well
still
done.
grew it. We grew the brand.
Okay, fair. So now understood the example between, say, a Maggie or a luxury category, etc., and terminal decline. Now, if you're a marketer or a brand owner, how do you know which one is hitting your PNL or your sales?
First one is the most obvious, which we just spoke about, where the category is declining. Players will try promotions, discounts, they will even increase distribution, but the category will never grow. Category will stay stagnant or decline. That is when you know you're fighting a losing battle. That's the first sign of it.
Okay. And if there is a temporary blip in demand or temporary slump, uh, then some of these things, like you're saying, players doing discounting, players doing promotions or increasing distribution, that should be able to revive some of that.
Absolutely, because you are incentivizing the purchase. Now, unless people do not even want the purchase, want the incentive, that's when they're not going to buy. And I'm talking category wide, not just one brand. So that is when you understand, okay, category is going through a bad phase and it's possibly a terminal decline.
Okay, understood. Okay, so then there must be a number of things that when a marketer or a startup owner sees, they should be able to say that this seems to be a specific sign that my category is in decline, right?
Right.
Okay.
So the first one is sales. Second one is what's happening with the consumer? What are they doing? Are they just simply abstaining from the category? Or are they substituting your category with another adjacent category? I go back to Tang because they were stopping to buy concentrates, but they were moving that purchase occasion to ready to drink beverages. So this means there is a ready alternative to your entire category that's coming up. That's a second sign of saying that your category is in terminal decline.
So therefore, there is the sales volume side, there is the consumer preference side. I'm sure between the two, there is also the intermediaries. For example, the trade. There
Absolutely.
must be some sign at the trade which also tells you that your category is kind of declining.
See, the trade is so sharp that when summer is coming in, say from Holi, they will start destocking the winter SKUs like Chyawanprash and cold cream and start moving to the beverages very fast.
Yeah.
They will do this for March, they'll start prepping in January itself. Now, when they don't do it in GT, that's when you know, okay, the demand is not as high. The other thing with retailers is that they will play the category game, as in they want the number 3 player to become number 1 so that they get more margins. Even modern trade, for that matter, the amount of shelf space they allocate will be extremely different as you go. The concentrates, I remember at one point had a large bay, almost an entire bay of syrups and squashes and powders and everything else. Today, if you see, it's like 1/4 of a bay in modern trade. That itself is a very clear sign. Even if you are not talking about seasonal sales at GT, this will give you very clear indication that yes, your category is losing out to adjacent categories.
Understood. Okay. So we're talking about all stakeholders then. So there is the ultimate result, which is the volume. Then we are talking about consumer who determines what happens. There is the trade that feels the pinch and therefore they make the shift. And then there are the players, the companies, etc. There must also be some sign that you should be able to read off them.
Yeah. So the moment you see the entire category going in for promotions unnecessarily, that's when you know everybody's feeling the same pinch. You don't even have to wait for your Nielsen reports to come in.
Okay. Okay. And promotion usually is all about short-term investment.
Right.
I'm sure all kind of
Yeah.
investments would start going down.
Yeah, because in fact the investments start increasing to say, I want to incentivize the sale.
Yeah.
They
Short-term
start,
incentives will go up. Yeah.
yeah, because only when you have a sales blip, you want to take that short-term measure to spike up your sale. And when everybody's doing it, it means everybody needs a spike. And therefore, nobody's going to get that spike when everybody's activating at the same time.
Okay. These kind of responses will tell you. Then I also believe that long-term investments like equity investment or innovation, those will also take a hit.
Okay, so this is what happened with the brands, right? Now, some brands will try to innovate. And you will see the innovations are not working. We did an entire episode about the case study we did on the Tang 1 liter pack, right?
Yeah.
So what was that innovation? We were just putting Tang in a different pack. And it wasn't a big innovation, but it got us some traction for a certain period of time. Now, at Tang, we tried launching multiple flavors. Now, even that did not take any traction with the consumer because innovation stopped working when your category is not really performing too well and consumers are shifting out a bit.
So now, if there is an all-round pressure on demand, Sharan, those of us who have been in sales and marketing know that this also creates pressure on the trade, and this leads to tremendous problems in uh, rates, discounting, all the telltale signs that
Yeah,
there is issue.
yep, absolutely,
Yeah. Okay. So that would also, Sharan, I think, erode the price value equation for the consumer.
absolutely. Like
If
if they're not willing to buy at discounted prices, they're just not. They're not willing to engage with the category, and they almost have no affinity for the category anymore. They are
yeah.
they're there at a point where the brand is not the brand or the category is no longer relevant to the consumer at that point.
Hmm.
And this happens again, going back to Tang. How many of us have had a concentrated beverage in the last year or two? Very handful. That's exactly what's happening to the category. And we don't even recall those brands, right? I keep talking about Tang because I worked on it. Nobody really does talk about Tang or its competition.
Now, one more entity that I did not mention is then therefore the competition, the other categories that you said
Yes,
that, for example, RTD was gaining, ready to drink was gaining when concentrates were losing.
absolutely.
So, therefore, there will be a sign on the other side also.
Exactly. For a category, a consumer's consumption pocket is largely the same. Now, if one category is getting more share of pocket than your category, that again is what we said at the beginning, right? They're growing at your expense. Consumers are moving out. You're not willing to come back even for your price. Trade is not stocking you. So that's about the 7 signs of saying the category is in terminal decline.
Fair. So, now that you've painted such a grim picture, Sharan, successfully so, and you've committed that kind of explanation for everybody. Now tell us, if you as a marketer find yourself in such a situation, and obviously you did, so what can you do to turn it around? What is the suggestion? What should the marketers do?
As a marketer, you don't have the call to say give up
Hmm.
on the brand yet. You got to
Hmm.
run with the brand.
Hmm.
So your primary job is to make sure if the category ship is going down, at least you are the last one to go down in the category. So what you can do is you can shift, you can innovate to move into the adjacent categories because adjacent categories what is growing. So Tropicana actually did this very well. Very few people know that Tropicana started as a powdered beverage in the US and then moved into the ready to drink category because that's
Interesting.
where the consumer was going. And you could also go where the consumer is going by premiumizing because if you remember, we spoke about the early innovators, how the growth cycle happens, how the adoption happens. Even when the category is declining, it is the heavy consumers who will leave it the last.
Hmm.
So the heavy consumers are still available for you to pick up business from. So therefore, you could premiumize, you could offer premium solutions targeted at the heavy consumer, larger packs possibly, and therefore make more money in the limited time that you have left.
Okay. So when you say heavy consumers, which also means that there are segments within your consumers who are either holding on or maybe even growing.
Yeah, they'll be the last ones to leave the category. So you have to fight for them instead of going after driving new tries, which we say for a brand's growth, you need to get in new triers. But in this case, you go after the heavy consumers of the category.
Many brands that have over the years had some loyal consumer base, and when they see this decline, etc., most of them try to evoke nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, nostalgia always works, right? It doesn't work forever, but it works for a limited period of time. And if your brand is old enough, has got a legacy enough to command nostalgia, leverage it because that will give you a revived sense of enthusiasm and affinity for the category, for the brand, even if the category doesn't have that affinity. Just to bring back the old days, It could last you a season or two, but that's it. But do it, because that will make sure you have more runway until the category goes down.
I recently saw this campaign by Tata Namak. So they
Yes.
had this old jingle, Namak ho Tata ka Tata Namak. So they tried to create a campaign around it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a declining category, but it works brilliantly for a brand that's in decline as one of the last straws you can take, you can grab at.
Okay. Okay, fair. And like you said earlier, if a category is declining and you try to go deeper, you try to see which parts, which consumers, which formats are declining, that should give you some innovation ideas also.
Oh, absolutely. For Tang, for making ice cream, you see Ruafza started being used across not just with milk, but in the bakery preparations and stuff like that. So there are different use cases you can create for your brand and say, and therefore go after these niches of consumers.
And accordingly, Sharan, there could be not just consumers, but there could be markets that might be growing.
Oh yeah. So this is largely for the international brands, right? What happens is the way the market evolves in every country is not the same. Take Tang, for example. Tang completely lost ground in the US because that's where it started. But it is the number one in-home consumption beverage in Brazil and Philippines, even more than Coke. So that's because it's just become a habit in those markets. So what Mondelez has done is focused on the markets where Tang has got stronghold. And that is something you can do because not all markets will decline at the same time. Exploring markets where the category still has got traction, it's a great way because concentrates, while we're saying it's not convenient, it is great for the price because you're not transporting water. There are different reasons why the category can work. For example, in Africa, concentrates still do very well. That is an avenue of growth brands can look at.
Okay. So I think, Sharan, thus far, we have concentrated too much on the concentrate category. Are there any more examples that, maybe you can quote where brands have successfully countered this category decline,
Yeah.
whether current or impending? If you can
Yes.
share any example.
So there is, I read about this. I didn't know about it earlier. So this was in the book called Playing to Win by A.G. Lafley and one more person, in which they talk about Olay, the cream,
Anti-aging cream.
lotion. It was the anti-aging cream. It was always considered the old woman's cream. And the women were continuing to age and the brand was losing significant relevance. And I think they tried about 3-4 relaunches of the brand. It didn't work because the anti-aging lotion itself so anti-aging requires a lot more high-end expertise driven engagement. Otherwise, there's no RTB for anti-aging. So what they did is they looked at the consumer and they said, okay, we're not anti-aging anymore, but we are talking about preventing aging. So we go after preserving the youthful skin. So we'll go after the 20s, 30s, even the teenage girl and say, we will help you stay young for longer. Than telling the older woman, we will get you to go
Reverse
back
age.
to reverse aging. They changed that communication they did. That was a good way to break out of a category slump because all anti-aging creams were declining. That didn't work.
Okay, interesting. And hence, to do this, to make this transition, one, obviously they would have had changed their communication. What else did they change?
It obviously they did more than communication. Communication was the easiest to put across. So it was a complete repositioning of the brand. They redid the entire formulation to say this is to preserve. So they include this niacinamide, peptides, all these names, all these, I don't even know what they mean. But they came into common parlance because of Olay's revamp. To say, I am to preserve the younger skin and therefore got them to attract a broader audience.
Okay. So, okay, interesting. So, therefore, they recognize the signs, I don't know early enough or not, and successfully then repositioned themselves into an aspirational category and something in more preventive zone rather than curative zone.
Yeah. So they created this term, mastige was created during Olay's revamp, repositioning. That's when they said, we're going to be mastige. We're not mass. We're going to create the mid-tier pricing segment. And we're going to go after the younger women. And most brands are afraid of repositioning a brand that's lasted for too long. And to have the guts to look at where the consumer is going, because our brand means nothing if the consumers are not coming to us. So have the guts to reposition is what it takes.
I think it's about both the things, Sharan. One part is, I think, like you rightly said, and I think this is a brilliant example of how to reposition. What are the things that you can do? It adds a positive flavor to otherwise a gloomy picture that you had painted. But the other part is also about getting the timing right. You must know when to fight or when to flight.
Absolutely. Because if you can't do this, you should set your flight plan ready.
Mm.
You should keep your flight plan ready, saying, this is all I'm going to do. This is how long I can push this for. And I will be the last one to go down. That's the fight. But after that, we got to look at something else, or even before that.
Okay, very interesting. I think I never thought about fight or flight in this manner. So thank you for putting this together, Sharan. And before our listeners decide to flight, I must just thank you for putting this up, painting a gloomy picture to start with, but giving a brilliant example and thereby giving every brand owner something to think about.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net.